Going live.
That gets me going.
I know. I miss Edwin.
It's 1 o'clock in the morning where I am at. At least have to be a little bit, get up a little awake here.
But anyways, I hope everybody is doing great. I'm Loro. It's our first Batter Up show in a while, but we haven't done Sports Weekly in a while. We got to do an NBA Finals edition of Sports Weekly, Isaiah and Ben. I think that would be really good. Welcome to Batter Up. I mean, lots been going on since then. Fellas, how are you guys doing?
Lauro, it's been great to see you, my guy. I know that me and Isaiah have kind of held the fort as of the last couple days, couple weeks here, but it's great to have you back on and have the I guess you could say the OG is back in terms of our co-host, in terms of our hosting. So I'm really happy that you're back on here, and obviously to get back into our shows, doing the start with the Batter Up today. I will have my show in terms of Kicking with Cruz probably later in the week, so obviously keep tabs on that. But I'm doing great myself, as I hope you're doing good yourself as well.
And how about you? How
are
you doing?
Oh, I'm doing good, guys. It's great to see all of you guys once again. I know we were supposed to do this show. I think it was on Saturday, but then we kept
Sunday, but you had work.
Yeah, but then I had work, and I was just so exhausted. But yeah, it's great to see you, Loro, man. We missed you. We haven't seen you in so long.
Yeah, just because work's been kind of crazy this last month, and then trying to get myself situated for like the summer, what assignments I have to do for my job, and
right.
And August, I only will work some Thursdays, but mostly Fridays, so it won't have any effect with Extra Point being on a Monday or a Tuesday.
Oh, okay, yeah. So I mean, like with all of our work schedules just being busy, we just haven't had the time. But it's great to have all of us back once again and do another show.
Oh, yeah. So, well, first off, we'll talk about our favorite team report. But before we get into that, we will have, Isaiah, a NBA Finals edition of Sports Weekly. So, I don't know what day, but maybe possibly Wednesday, which we'll talk about. We'll recap the first three games of the finals and talk about which team is under pressure heading into Game 4 of the NBA Finals. So a lot to get to on that, but we'll start with the Dodgers. I mean, the Dodgers lost 2 out of 3 from the Yankees, which I thought it was a World Series preview, but you know what? Too early to predict that, but we still have a long, long way to go for that. But the Dodgers are playing the Reds tomorrow for a 3-game series in Cincy before going to Isaiah's ballpark in Citizens Bank Park in Philadelphia for a 3-game weekend series with the Philadelphia Phillies. But the Phillies have dealt with injuries, as you know, Isaiah. No Rhys Hoskins for the year, but I feel like that when Hoskins comes back, the Phillies, I think, are going to get back to playing really good baseball, But today, I know, Isaiah, you must be very happy that the Phillies beat the Detroit Tigers today, and Trey Turner hit 2 home runs, and the Phillies are starting to play good baseball at the right time. But when the Dodgers play the Phillies, I don't even know who's starting. I know Julio Urias might even get the bump for one of those games, but I really think the Dodgers, I think they're gonna pick up the momentum and all that. But the Dodgers, they're gonna have a long road trip before playing the White Sox for a 3-game series, and then on Father's Day weekend they'll take on the San Francisco Giants before going back on the road. So the Dodgers and Diamondbacks are both toe to toe in the National League West, but I still think the Dodgers are the better team. But I give a lot of credit to Torey Lovullo for getting this team upright, focused, and prepared to play. And we have to talk about that 1-year extension, which I think it was well deserved for Torey Lovullo. So, Isaiah, I'll go to you. I mean, your Phillies just beat the Detroit Tigers, and then you get my Dodgers this weekend.
Yeah, hey, I'll give credit where credit is due. I know I think it was Thursday and Friday, when the Phillies got swept by the Mets. I think I went on Ben's show and I said that, hey, Rob Thompson needed to be fired. The organization needed to have some big changes. The Phillies were playing awful baseball at that time, and that it was just an awful ball club to watch, and it was an awful product to watch. Nobody was swinging the bat well. The pitching staff was giving up runs a lot. The bullpen was struggling, and the Phillies were, I think they were at that time 6 games under 500, and then they lost to the Nationals in a very despicable loss, which they were down 6-0 at one point in that game. They were down 7-1 at one point after that. And I give them credit. They fought. They came all the way back to tie it at 7, and then they lost 8-7 when Rob Thompson, for some reason, decided to put in Connor Brogdon in the 8th inning, when you had Sir Anthony Dominguez and Craig Kimbrel both available to your disposal. And then that's why, I was freaking out, because they were 7 games under 500, and this team has shown to be very streaky. They would win 3 games in a row, and then they would lose 5 games in a row, and then they would go back to win another 3 games in a row. And then you're thinking, okay, it looks like this team hasn't turned around, but then they end up losing another 5-6 games in a row. So, credit to the Phillies. They bounced back, won the next 2 games against the Nationals. Their offense scored 10-plus runs in both of those 2 games. And then today against the Detroit Tigers, who, let's face it, they've been a big surprise this season, especially with how they started and how the Tigers have rallied back. I thought that it wasn't going to be an easy task for the Phils, and Aaron Nola came out. He pitched extremely well. He had a no-hitter going through, I believe, 6 2/3 of an inning before he gave up a bomb to Nick Maton in the 7th inning of that game that, pulled the Tigers within 5-3. But then the Phillies it was just unrelenting. The offense kept scoring runs. The bullpen put it away late in the game. So that was good to see, but it's been good the last 3 games for the Phillies. They've beaten the teams that they needed to beat in the Nationals and the Tigers. I'm not worried about those 2 teams. I'm just worried about when the schedule gets tougher, which it will the next couple of weeks, with the Dodgers, the D-backs, the Rays, the Mets, the Braves. Like, if the Phillies want to show me that they're a playoff team, they got to beat those teams. Those teams are the teams that we're trying to chase right now for a top spot in the playoffs in the National League. And I think the Phillies, they need to start showing people that they can start beating those teams, because if they can't, then it's going to be a long season for the Philadelphia Phillies. And I think right now, when you look at the Phillies, it's good to see that Trey Turner and JT Realmuto, who both were struggling going into this past week, they're both swinging the bat extremely well. Nick Castellanos is swinging the bat extremely well. Harper's getting going right now, but I think he'll start swinging the bat extremely well in the next few weeks. Schwarber is still struggling, so that's something that I'm kind of worried about. Pitching wise, it was great to see Aaron Nola go 7 innings tonight, but he's got to have consistency. That's the thing with this ball club is just the lack of consistency. They'll have good games one game, and then they'll have bad games the next 2 games, and then they'll look really good the game after that. So I just want to see more consistency from the Phillies, and if they do that, then I think we could definitely be a winning playoff ball club. But if you look at our schedule the next few weeks, it's going to be very rough. Low Roll mentioned that the Phillies play the Dodgers this upcoming week. We play 2 more games against Detroit tomorrow and Wednesday, which if the Phillies play the way that I think the Phillies can play, then I think the Phillies can definitely take care of business and win those 2 games. But then it's against the Dodgers. That's going to be a litmus test for sure. And then they play Arizona for a 4-game set in Arizona, which is tough. And then they play my Oakland Athletics for 3 games at the Coliseum, which I'll be attending 2 of those games. So
I was about to ask you. Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah,
you're going to be at a Phillies A's game. I mean,
yeah.
Are you
In
working
Oakland,
those
too.
games, or as an usher, or are you going to be attending it as a spectator?
So I'll be attending 1 game as an usher, and then the other game I'll be attending as a fan. So
What is it like attending that almost empty stadium at the Oakland Coliseum?
yeah, pretty much. That's why I'm trying to go there one of the games early so that I could maybe get Bryce Harper's autograph or get one of the guys' picture or something like that, because I know there's not going to be anybody there on Friday night, especially when the Phillies come in. So that should be fun. But after they play the A's, they got the Braves and the Mets back-to-back series, and then they play the Cubs, and then they play I believe the Rays. So this is going to be a really defining month for the Phillies, and if they can play good baseball, then I think that they definitely are a playoff team. But it remains to be seen about Rob Thompson's job, because like I told Ben on Kicking It with Cruz, if the Phillies continue to struggle, and let's say end of June, the Phillies are sitting here 7 games under 500, then I think it's a big problem, because you can't say it's early anymore, because you're 7 games under 500 at the end of June when we're almost halfway through the season, and that's a big problem. So this is going to be a crucial month for the Philadelphia Phillies, and the Phillies have to get back to 500 at least by the end of the month. And going to the team that I really dread about talking, which is the Oakland A's. I mean, they're 12-50. Fellas, they are 12-50. If they lose the next 2
Man,
games,
that's pathetic if you look at it. They're kind of like the 2013-2014 Houston Astros.
oh, they're worse than that, Low Roll. They're worse than that. I think that the A's are definitely in contention for the worst record in baseball history this year. If they lose the next 2 games, they'll be 40 games under 500. Fellas, just get that. I mean, 40 games under 500, and we haven't even reached the end of June yet. That's how pathetic the A's are. The bullpen just keeps giving it up, whatever lead they have. The starting pitching staff is putrid. The offense at least can put up some runs, but I mean everybody seems to be batting, besides Ruiz and Rooker, everybody seems to be batting like 220 or worse. The pitching staff, their issues are well documented. Everybody's ERA is 4.60 or worse. Same thing with the bullpen. Like everybody's ERA is like in the 5s and even worse than that. So I mean, there's really no hope for the A's. And if you look at their schedule, even though they're 12-40, or they're 12-50 right now, believe it or not, their schedule actually gets worse, because after they play 2 against the Pirates in Pittsburgh, they play 3 in Milwaukee against the Brewers. And then they play a 4-game series against the Rays in Oakland. And then they play 3 against the Phillies in Oakland, and then they have 3 against the Guardians in Cleveland, and then they have 3 against Toronto in Toronto, and then 3 against the Yankees in Oakland. So I don't know how many games the Phillies are going to win. I mean, the A's are going to win. out of that stretch. I just think that this team is primed for one of the worst records in not just the last 10 years in baseball, but in baseball history. And I definitely see major changes coming to the A's after the season, potentially with Mark Kotsay losing his job. If the A's, let's say, go 30-132 to finish the season.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, this is definitely a really slow start for the A's, but knowing that I don't know who's pitching against the Phillies for the Dodgers, but I was looking at the starters. I mean, Kershaw, Syndergaard. We'll take a look here. So I have the starting Tony Gonsolin tomorrow, and then Wednesday will be Noah Syndergaard, and then Thursday will be Clayton Kershaw. I mean, Noah Syndergaard is, if you look at it, Noah Syndergaard is just, he hasn't really worked out for us, but Isaiah, you said that he is better off in the bullpen, but the Dodgers are not going to put him that way, I mean, well, I don't know what to do with him because he hasn't turned out the best signing, that he hasn't turned out well, but we'll get through it. We're gonna have to keep starting him, and we're gonna have to see if he's gonna make jumps and improvements. So, Isaiah, do you have any thoughts on Syndergaard's atrocious start with the Dodgers?
Yeah, well, I mean, we'll probably get into it later on in the show, but like you said, I didn't really think it was I thought that when they signed him that they should have used him as a reliever because he's got a great stuff. I mean, he's throwing 95 to 97 with his fastball. He's got nasty off-speed stuff. I thought that when the Phillies used him out of the bullpen, I thought it was an extremely great move for the Phillies. So that's why I thought the Dodgers should have put him in the bullpen. Because I think he's going to be very dynamic in the bullpen. He's not going to be the Noah Syndergaard that he was with the Mets. Those days are unfortunately over. But I think if you put him in the bullpen, I think that you can get great results out of him, and he could be a very electric reliever for the Dodgers moving forward. I just don't think he can give you 5 to 6 quality innings anymore. Maybe 1 or 2 great innings. I would take that any day of the week if you're the Dodgers.
Well, other news to talk about is that there's a good chance tomorrow that one of our outfield prospects, Johnny LaDuca, will be making his major league debut, and that could be against the Cincinnati Reds tomorrow, and he could provide some power in the outfield. And I really think that if he adjusts to big leagues pitching, I think he'd be a guy that I would really like to see him either in the starting lineup or as a reserve. We'll have to wait and see on that. So that's kind of my final take here. So Ben, go to you here. The Boston Red Sox. Let's take a look here at the Boston Red Sox recent games here. So they did, however, one of their games got postponed because of rain with the Rays, and then they split the doubleheader, and then they lost the series to the Tampa Rays. So, and then they have to play Tito Francona and the Cleveland Guardians for a 3-game series tomorrow before playing the New York Yankees this next weekend. Ben, what is your thoughts so far on this recent slide that the Red Sox have been on?
It's been inconsistent to say the least at best. They're 30-30 and they're 30-30 for a reason. They've had, really good strides kind of the start of the season. They were looking really well for at least at points, but then, guys like Adam Duvall went down. Chris Sale is now hurt, and Chris Sale was looking some of the best that he's pitched in the last couple of years. Just a feel for the guy. He just can't catch a break, but Trevor Story's been out for a while, but it's also just been the overall play, and it's been a lot of similar stuff from now last year. But the defense, I mean, the play that the infield grand slam that happened on Sunday was just absolutely inexcusable. I mean, throwing the baseball around like Little League defense out there is just, Alex Corey was even saying after the game Sunday in terms of we're not a good defensive team. Just a team like Tampa Bay where you can't give up extra outs. They're going to pay for it. Tampa had three of their best guys going. Obviously not going to make excuses, but they had Shane McClanahan today, who was fantastic. He's been really good against us in the past. Tampa Bay is 7-1 against us, so they really have our number, and comes to show that we're not really kind of in their overall range in terms of division. We played the Jays pretty well overall at the beginning of this year. The thing about this Red Sox team specifically is they're going to have to, they want to make any waste against the postseason, they got to play better in division. But even that before the race series, they lost 2 out of 3 to the Reds at home. That was absolutely, that was not good. They lost 2 of the games by 1 run where they're very winnable games. The first game, they were down by quite a bit, but then they made it a comeback just to fall short. And then the game after that, they were within a run or 2 like that. But whether it's inexcusably time of hitting, bad defense, starting pitching's been okay, but it's been up and down. It's just been a very a big roller coaster going up and down. It's just not really kind of fun. It's overall level. There's been some games where we've had really good hitting, really bad pitching, really good pitching, really bad hitting. And sometimes defensively, specifically, the doubleheader, I think, was a big reason why we lost the series. Kenley Jansen pitched some of his best baseball, at least in a while. I got the save on Saturday, and then the Sox were tied on, I think it was 2-2. It was 2-2 in the top of the 9th. And they brought Kenley back in for the second game, which I didn't know specifically in terms of why that was the case, why you bring your closer on a double header specifically. You don't save him for the rest of the series. But obviously it didn't really make a difference because we were down in the Sunday game. We were down today, losing 4-1. We've been behind a lot of games specifically. Not a good recipe for success, but it's 30-30. They're 500, very similar in terms of last year. And, they're going to get Adam Duvall back coming up this weekend. So that should be a major boost because he was one of our best hitters in April. Trevor Story could be even back before potentially playing in the field, which could be massive to our lineup, at DH. But, the defense has to be a lot better than it has been. The defense as a whole has been just extremely shaky and bad. And then, starting pitcher wise depends about Chris Sale's health. Chris Sale is going to be out for an extended period of time. Corey Kluber already went to the bullpen because he wasn't working out as the overall starter, which I didn't like him in the past. In terms of the signing, Nathan Eovaldi and Michael Walker are the AL and NL Cy Young pitchers of the month. In terms of the guys that Chaim Bloom has gotten rid of. So obviously I still have my overall criticism of Chaim. And obviously if things don't change in the second half of the season, I think Chaim Bloom is going to be the one to be blamed and be fired. But time will tell in terms of that. Hopefully that, we're probably in the hardest division in baseball in terms of for a reason. But obviously there's no excuses still in terms of how we're playing. We have Cleveland coming up in terms of our schedule coming up. We have Cleveland for 3. I think that's a very doable series. We can probably pull out, at least 2 to 3. And then this weekend is actually, guys, the first weekend we play the Yankees all season. Crazy enough. We didn't play them in April. We didn't play them in May. And how we play them the first time here in June. So we play the Yankees for 3 in New York, which I'm hopeful to at least go to one of those games this weekend. And then they play the Rockies at home next week, which I will be attending one of those games at Fenway Park next week. And then they play the Yankees again, back-to-back weekends, so one in New York and then one at home against Boston before they go on the road to face the Twins, which are a very good team. Then they play the White Sox, which I think is a team we could probably beat on because they've been kind of struggling. But as a whole for the Red Sox, they're a very up-and-down team, so you never know. And then the rest of the month they have home against the Marlins, and then they start a series in Toronto before the July month starts. So, the Red Sox really specifically, if they have to get going, now's the time to get going in terms of turning things around because in terms of right around where the trade deadline is going to be, which is going to be probably within the next couple months, 30-30, of course, is not going to cut it. But, if they're within reach in terms of potential wild card spot, then it could be kind of a big difference between if they're going to be a buying type of team or be a selling type of team or even a potential mix for both, which I personally think if I look at it, I think there'd be a mixture of both, kind of similar to last year. So that's kind of the state of the team at the moment right now.
Yeah, so anyways, we're going to talk about some games of note here. The first one we're going to talk about is the Cardinals and Rangers, but I don't know if Isaiah's on here, but so far his wish of the Texas Rangers winning the AL West and dethroning the Houston Astros is coming to fruition because this has been a magical start for the Texas Rangers, and I could say there's reasons why. Because if you look at the Rangers, they're playing their best baseball right now because if you look at it, without Jacob deGrom, who's on the injured list right now, he's not going to be back until after the All-Star break. The Rangers, they have figured it out because they have good pitching. Outside of deGrom, Eovaldi's been holding down the fort along with Martin Perez. Dane Dunning has stepped up nicely. Bruce Bochy has done a phenomenal job in his first year as the manager of the Texas Rangers. And wasn't Isaiah right about Bruce Bochy being the manager of the Rangers? And he was the one that wanted Bruce Bochy to be the Rangers manager because of his experience, his wealth of knowledge of the game of baseball. And you felt like him coming out of retirement was appropriate for Bochy after he retired in 2019 because the things you said, Isaiah, about Bochy was that he retired in 2019 because he was going to get scapegoated by Farhan Zaidi. But now he sees eye to eye with Chris Young.
Fellas, I know we are like a week into June, but I'm going to go ahead and proclaim this right now. I think the Texas Rangers are the favorites to win the World Series. I mean, that might be a bold take, but I had them actually, I believe, going to the World Series or even winning it against the Dodgers when we did our prediction show back in March. But I cannot believe what I'm watching from the Rangers. I mean, I thought that this Rangers team, when deGrom went out, I thought that they were going to struggle because, they didn't have that ace on the hill. But this Rangers team is just far surpassing any expectations that I even set for them. I mean, they're 39-20 right now, and a lot of the games that they played a lot of great teams in the game of baseball, and that's why they have accomplished the record that they've accomplished right now. They're winning games in a blowout. They're winning the close games. They're winning the pitcher's duel. Their offense is the best offense right now in baseball. Guys like Marcus Semien is swinging the bat extremely well. Corey Seager, Nathaniel Lowe, Adolis Garcia. He's proving to be one of the best power hitters in all of baseball. And then they have a guy named Josh Jung, who right now you can argue is the front runner for Rookie of the Year. I mean, this guy is doing extremely great things, whether it's, defensive stuff at third base or whether it's with the bat. He's always coming through in the clutch. Jonah Heim, a guy that not a lot of people have heard of. He's swinging the bat extremely well as too. Even a Mitch Garver. Mitch Garver 3 years ago, he was one of the top hitters in all of baseball with the Twins. He comes over to Texas, has a really bad first year, struggled with injuries and just inconsistent play on offense, and he's sliding out there just really he's just playing great baseball right now as the designated hitter. And then you look at the pitching staff, like Laurel mentioned, guys like Nathan Eovaldi, guys like Martin Perez, guys like Dane Dunning have held down the fort while deGrom is out. And also, you look at guys like Andrew Heaney, who has bounced back after a rough go-around with the Angels. He played well with the Dodgers, and then he latched on with the Texas Rangers on, I believe, a 2-year deal, and he's been better than expected with the Texas Rangers. They have a great offense. They've got a great pitching staff. Mike Maddox has worked his magic well with the Texas Rangers in his second go-around. The pitchers are all pitching really well. The one thing I am worried, though, about the Texas Rangers is their bullpen. Their bullpen has been one of the worst bullpens in all of baseball. Outside of Will Smith, who's their closer, they don't really have a lockdown reliever that they can bridge the gap to Will Smith. They've tried Jonathan Hernandez, hasn't worked out. They tried Jose Leclerc, he hasn't worked out. The Texas Rangers, I think at the trade deadline, Chris Young and Cole, they got to go out there and get 2 stud relievers at the deadline, because if they do that, then I think the Texas Rangers are definitely well equipped to bridge that gap in the later innings to the closer Will Smith. And I don't even know if I trust Will Smith still as a closer. I know he's done really good stuff with Texas right now, but we've seen the inconsistency from Will Smith. At times he has a tendency to blow up, and I'm kind of just scared that, he hasn't blown up just yet, but I'm scared that, in the big games that he's going to blow up in the postseason, and you don't want to see that from your closer. So I think the Rangers at the deadline, if they can get some bullpen help, maybe a couple lockdown relievers, then I think the Rangers would be good to go. But this is a darn good Rangers team right now, and Bruce Bochy is doing a fabulous job with the Rangers. I'm surprised that not a lot of teams pursued him when he was available this past offseason. I think the only team that pursued him was Texas, and it's paying dividends right now on the baseball field. But, man, this Rangers team, they're electric. They are so good. And right now, they look like the best team in all of baseball.
My daughters haven't even played them yet, but I can't wait to see Corey Seager and those guys next month. So, Ben, I'll go to you. So, for the Cardinals' sake here, this has been a rough season. And then they lost to the Rangers today. I mean, the Rangers, they're a really good team, and they're so fun to watch with Bruce Bochy and all that. So, what is your thought on the Cardinals? I mean, their season has not gone up to par, but you still got to be patient with them. This is their first year without Yachty, and they still have to figure things out.
Yeah, they had a really tough start to their season. And it was actually the series when they came to Fenway where kind of our skid of bad baseball inconsistencies kind of started to hit, because, before that series specifically, I think we took 2 out of 3 from Seattle. And then we played the Cardinals that same weekend. And we had 2 games specifically where Kenley blew 2 leads. And then we lost the game on Sunday night, via blowout or something like that. And pretty much ever since that kind of weekend, it felt like the Cardinals really from that weekend, after that one, the series after something, it looked like they were starting to hit around. They started to feel like they were kind of feeling like they were back. And I feel like they're just a team that just has a lot of experience. Yeah, I mean, it just hasn't been as to par, I would say, for that team so far. They just lost, they just got swept to Pittsburgh. They lost, let's see, looks like a series to Cleveland, Cleveland's been struggling kind of as of late. They played the Royals. They split that Royals series. The game that they won against Kansas City, they only won 2-1. So, they still have had some struggles kind of up and down in terms of their season. In terms of that overall division, though, crazy things, heck, Pittsburgh is number 1 right now. Who would have thought that as of right now at this point in time? Cincinnati could obviously, fall back down to earth. Same with the Cubs. Cubs are 26-33. Cardinals are 25-36. Obviously it's not ideal by any means. I personally think that the Cardinals have a very uphill climb. I think it's because they're managing. I think the managing specifically hasn't been as great, especially in game. Yeah, I mean, their bullpen, I think, has also had some problems too. They've had some issues in terms of that. But Texas, Loro, and Isaiah, they're actually coming to play at Fenway on July 4th. Actually, a game I really am potentially interested in going to. But it's not just because it's July 4th. It's in terms of how damn good that Texas Rangers team is. Isaiah, obviously, I thought that this team would be good, but I didn't expect this team specifically to just be hitting on all cylinders left and right, specifically in their offense. I mean, I looked at it overall in terms of their batting. They're in terms of number 1 in average. They're number Yeah, they're 278 in terms of batting average as a team, which is exceptional. They're number one in on base percentage in terms of the overall league. They're number one in runs. They have 375 runs to start the overall season so far, which has been exceptional. They're number two in slugging. So, I mean, overall offensively, you look at it, like you said, Isaiah, they have Garcia, they have Heim, they have Jun, they have Seager, they have Semien. Seager and Semien last year were atrocious. I think specifically this season, I felt like potentially that they had a little bit of pressure in terms of coming from another team. I think, sometimes with some guys it takes a little bit. This year, they kind of feel like it's more fresh. It's just another season, and they're absolutely killing it right now. One other guy specifically on the pitching stuff, I know we talked about Evaldi, we talked about Heaney, guys like that. John Gray. John Gray's been absolutely underrated this season if you just look at his overall numbers. Just their overall pitching stuff, their offense specifically, that's a specific team. I think when you get a guy like Bruce Bochy, you get the balance, right? That's something that I feel like the Red Sox going to have to start to figure something out. They want to be a really good team. They got to find the right coach. I don't know. Obviously, I like Cora a lot, but I think it's ownership's more on the side in terms of the Sox. In terms of, I feel like getting back on track. But for some teams, it's the manager, and I feel like Texas, that's the one. I see a comment right here is Ali Barmal from Ishmael on the hot seat. And, if things don't change in terms of by mid-season, I probably don't think it would be after this season because I feel like it's only his first, second year. But, if things go down south potentially next year, of course, we could obviously have those, conversations for sure because they're a lot better team than a lot of that overall division. And if they're not playing to their standards, it's in terms of underperformance. Yeah. In terms of the overall, series, though, like I said, Texas is the real deal. I feel like if you're the Cardinals, though, they've had a tough start to the year. I wouldn't rule them out, but it's obviously has been ideal for them either.
Yeah. So, anyways, the next game we'll talk about here is the Astros and Blues. I'll start with Isaiah on the Astros side of things. Want to tell you, I mean, the Houston Astros are starting to play better baseball than we see it right now. Toronto Blue Jays, they're a team that's keeping afloat, but they've taken a step back for some reasons, because Alek Manoah is not the Alek Manoah that we know because he has had an awful season. He was an all-star last year, but do I think Alek Manoah can get back to the Alek Manoah of what we know back last year? I think he can, but he just has to figure it out. He needs to pick it up, Isaiah.
Yeah, this game or this series was hyped up to be a potential playoff preview because you look at the Astros, what they've done, playing extremely good baseball, 36-24. If the Rangers weren't off to the hot start that they were off, the Astros would be running away with the American League West. The fact that they're sitting here in second place, despite playing great baseball, ever since the third week of April, having one of the best records in baseball ever since that span, and they're only sitting in second place. I mean, that itself is mind-blowing because the Astros should be running away with that division, but credit to the Rangers for how good they've been since the start of the season. But I think when you look at this game, first on the Astros showed tonight that, their offense is still as good as ever. Mauricio Dubon had a great game. Jeremy Pena had 2 hits and a run scored. Yordan Alvarez had 2 hits and 2 runs batted in. Kyle Tucker had 3 hits. Jose Abreu, he had a hit. But I think the biggest swing was by a guy named Corey Jokes, who hit a grand slam in this game to propel the Astros over the Blue Jays. A lot of people don't know who this guy is, but he's a guy that has come up in the Astros minor league. And you guys know about the Astros minor league. It just seems like they always pump out superstar after superstar after superstar to just help keep them going. And I think that Corey Jokes might be another one of their top prospects turned into a star in the near future. But yeah, the Astros, they looked really good. Offensively, they swung the bats well. Brandon Belak had a great start for the Astros. Their bullpen didn't really have to do too much because they had a big lead. But the one guy that I am worried about for the Astros, Ben and Loro, is Alex Bregman. Alex Bregman has not looked like his true self, not only this year, but last season as well. I mean, this guy just doesn't seem comfortable at the plate. His defense, is as good as ever. But offensively, he looks like what Klay Thompson is right now for the Warriors, which is he just looks like a shell of his old self. And I hope Bregman can get back to what he was before, because Bregman was one of the most dynamic hitters in all of baseball. But this guy is struggling. He's only hitting 254 right now. Bregman typically is hitting in the 300s. So I don't know what's up with him. Maybe it's timing wise or something like that. He's only got 8 home runs, which for him is a really low number. He's got 36 runs batted in, but I'm worried about Alex Bregman. I mean, that guy used to be one of the most dynamic hitters in baseball. And, right now he's just struggling. And he's not putting up the Alex Bregman numbers of old that we know and love. So I'm worried about him. That's one thing to keep an eye on for the Astros is, can Bregman get back to, I don't think he can get back to MVP level, but I think that, he can get back to maybe being that star that he was a couple of years ago. So that's the one thing to worry about with the Astros. For the Blue Jays, Laurel, I agree with you. Alex Manoah, he looks lost out there on the baseball field. I don't know what's up with this guy. He gave up 7 runs today. I think he only got 1 out in the entire game before he got lifted. And his ERA just continues to climb and climb. This guy was one of the best pitchers in baseball a couple of years ago. And now he's got an ERA that is, I believe, in the 7s. And, there's talk that he might get optioned to the minor leagues. There's talk he might get DFA'd. I mean, it's crazy just how far he's gone down the last few years. And the Blue Jays have to get him right, because they need him in that rotation, because when he's on, he's on. And with him and Bassett and Kikuchi and all the guys that they have in that starting rotation, that's a tough rotation. But they got to get Alex Manoah right. I don't know. Maybe you send him to the minor leagues. I think that's what you do, because look at Jose Alvarado with the Phillies. He was struggling, even though he had great stuff. He was struggling, and then you look at what he did. He went down to the minor leagues. He worked on his mechanics, and he came back as one of the best relievers in all of baseball. So I think for Manoah, I think that's what you got to do, Sally. You got to send him to the minor leagues, hopefully get him figured out, and then have him come back in the second half of the season. But yeah, Manoah looks lost, and you got to fix that right now if you're the Blue Jays. And I think for the Blue Jays, now that the trade deadline is about a couple of months away, you got to start looking at the possibility of getting starting pitching help, because it just looks like guys like Kikuchi struggling, guys like Manoah is struggling. You can't only run 3 starters out there and expect to win a championship.
What about you, Ben? What's your thoughts on the on the Blue Jays and Astros game?
Yeah, I mean, I didn't really watch most of it, but just from this overall standards, I kind of have a couple of takeaways here. Alek Manoah is essentially pretty much mentally lost right now, like you guys have been saying. I actually was watching OB Network earlier this morning. Well, actually now yesterday for me, but and they actually had Al Leiter was doing a breakdown in terms of his overall stuff from last year and this year. And it just feels like he's missing a lot of spots in terms of location-wise. He used to have a really good, devastating slider. I mean, obviously, but the Red Sox, every single time I would see Manoah in terms of on the ESPN probable starters, I'd obviously lose my mind. I'd be like, yep, that's a loss. That's a loss. This guy was absolutely just cooking us every single time. And so I don't know specifically in terms of how far crazy it happened. I mean, heck, it was a year ago last year where he came to Fenway and was absolutely just barking at all the terms of our guys and just mowing us down for like 7-8 innings. I mean, he just felt like he was the owner of us. And now he feels like he's one of the most lost pitchers out there. It's crazy how, things happen. But, thankfully they have Kevin Gausman. Kevin Gausman and Jose Barrios, of course, have been really kind of kicking the slack up. Kikuchi's had his moments. Bassett, of course, had a really good one in New York the other night. Even though he had a couple bad ones before, but he's been of course, decent. So, the thing about Toronto is, they're in a really tough division, like the Red Sox and others. And, a guy like Manoah, who has essentially been one of the best pitchers in baseball in the past, if he can't be back to terms of his old self, I mean, he's got the path to go against a team like Houston. And obviously, could potentially be a result that you can have if, Toronto is able to find themselves into the postseason and Manoah's just not on full on self. I mean, heck, he had problems with Seattle last year, and I think the playoffs. He had problems with Tampa Bay, a couple starts ago. So especially against a lot of good hitting teams where in the past he used to be really good and be able to blow guys away, he's just not getting the job done right now. So that's, of course, a really big red flag if you're a Blue Jays fan for sure. In terms of the Astros right now, this is why, Isaiah, I know that you're, of course, proclaiming the Rangers to be your World Series favorites. Like I said, Isaiah, do not poke the bear. This is a certain type of a team where, you give them the bullets material. The Yankees have done it. I think the Red Sox might have done it. This is a specific team until they're specifically knocked off in terms of for good, and which they won't because they're absolutely loaded in their farm. Offensively, they just brought back Altuve. And you see in terms of what their lineup could do when you bring back Altuve, I mean, guys like Jordan, was mashing 400 feet plus tonight in Toronto. I mean, the guy, it was not even a bad pitch. He was off the plate. I mean, what you can do. They have guys like Kyle Tucker, who's been a great underrated player that I've loved for years. James Gonzalez is telling me how much he loves Kyle Tucker's game in terms of the division with the Angels. Bregman, of course, has had not terrible numbers. The guy specifically, Isaiah, that's had really tough numbers, and if this guy can really get going, it pays absolute massive dividends for other guys. It's Jose Abreu. They brought Jose Abreu in to be a really good, piece in terms of that first base to replace Yuli Gurriel. And at the point, I thought the Red Sox would take a look at me like, oh my God, Jose Abreu now in that lineup with that short overall porch in left field, he's batting .213 with one homer. One. I mean, it's crazy. And the one home run, I believe, was against the Oakland Athletics. So, which I think is it basically is the pitching staff in terms of if you need a homer and you're really struggling, you'll get it somehow. But still, I mean, that's just staggering number. I mean, this guy was batting .379 last year. And I mean, maybe the second half, that's the thing with Abreu. If Abreu could have a massive second half, I don't know about if Brownlee will come back, but I mean, that lineup specifically between Jordan, Pena, Altuve, Bregman can get going a little bit. I mean, I still think that they're the best overall team in that division until otherwise. I feel like the Rangers could be a very fun team to see. They could potentially be this year's Seattle Mariners. I wouldn't rule it out, even though I feel like Seattle still has a little bit left in the tank for sure. I think they've just had a really tough start. In other words, do the pretenders, contenders, whatever, like at the end of the show in terms on the script. But yeah, I mean, my overall takeaway is the Blue Jays have been very underperforming, been up and down because of their overall starting pitching woes, and the Astros do not poke the bear because that team for sure is still a force of nature in the American League.
Well, anyways, we're going to talk about the Royals and Marlins game. I mean, starting with the Marlins here, the Marlins have been surprisingly good, and I really think that this team is heading in the right direction, and I could see them being this year's version of the Baltimore Orioles. And as for Kansas City, oh man, this is a young team that is growing, and Isaiah thought that they would win the division already, but he was like, and I was like, that.
Yikes.
Quintaro, I think, is the right fit for the Royals, but
it's still a while.
They have a long, long way to go, my friend. But I do like Bobby Wood Jr. and Salvador Perez. Salvador Perez is really the clubhouse leader of the group for the Royals. But I'll tell you, Isaiah, the Marlins look good, but the Royals, on the other hand, your pick for them to win the division isn't looking too savvy.
You know what was worse about that prediction? Forget the fact that I picked them to win the division. I picked them to go to the ALCS. If I remember correctly, I had them winning. I forgot against the Rays, I think, because I thought.
Oh my God!
were going to be a good team, and I had them. Ben, I don't think you were on that show, but me and Laura did the prediction show at the beginning of the season, and I had Rangers, Royals, ALCS. The first part of it, I might have gotten correct because the Rangers look like a damn good team, but I've been talking about the Royals being an absolute disappointment this season, and I mean. You talk about how my Tigers picked to win the AL Central. That was a bad pick. This might have just surpassed it with how pathetic the Royals are playing right now. But yeah, in terms of this game, we're talking about the Marlins more later on in the show. But I think Miami is a true contender for a playoff spot in the NL. I mean, this team is really good right now. Their offense, which is led by Luis Ariz. I think when we talked about this on Sports Weekly when he got traded, that this was going to be one of the most or more underrated trades in baseball. And it's turning out to be a great trade. Luis Ariz going to the Marlins, he's the guy that's the tone setter of that offense. Wherever he goes, the team follows. And you look at what he's doing now. I think I read a stat the other day that he hasn't struck out twice in a game this entire season.
That's
that.
crazy.
Yeah, that is insane with how guys are just swinging and missing at a rapid pace. The fact that you haven't struck out twice in any game this season is absolutely crazy. And he had another a 3-hit game again. He had 2 RBIs. Guys like Brian De La Cruz. He had 2 runs batted in as well. Guys like Joey Wendo, Jesus Sanchez, John Birdie, some of these unsung heroes, they're just swinging the bat extremely well. But I think the guy that a lot of people aren't talking about that was a major pickup for the Marlins, and that's really helping them or helping lead that charge for Miami is Yuli Gurriel. This guy was one of the most underrated hitters in baseball with the Astros. And when the Astros decided not to re-sign him, I was kind of confused because I thought yeah, he was injured last year. But other than last year, that guy's been hitting 270 to 300 on average. And he's a really good hitter. And he doesn't have the power that a lot of first basemen are known for, but he can still hit for average. He can still drive in runs. He's a really good hitter, and Miami picked him up on a minor league deal, and he's turning out to be one of the best pickups for them in the offseason. And then you look at the rotation, I still got some question marks for them because they're throwing a lot of guys out that you don't really know of. Braxton Garrett pitched tonight. He gave up 4 runs in 5 innings. But their rotation, you talk about Sandy Alcantara, you talk about Jesus Luzardo in that rotation, leading that team. I still think Miami needs to pick up maybe one veteran option so that they can have some experience if they do make the playoffs, because Johnny Cueto, sadly, is a shell of himself. He's washed up. He's not what he once was. But I think a veteran option would help them and also get some bullpen help too, because guys like JT Chargois, Stephen Oker, Dylan Floral, they're good pitchers, but I don't think they're back into the bullpen material for the Marlins. But the Marlins, they look extremely well. They're a team that I think will be in the mix for a playoff spot in the NL when it's all said and done. And sadly for the Royals, I mean, that is another hot boat pick that is just sadly thrown down the toilet at this point because the Royals are 18-42. They have the second worst record in the American League behind the Oakland A's. And Bobby Witt Jr. is going to be a star of this league, but everybody else is just not stepping up. And if I'm Salvador Perez, I think for Salvador Perez, I think it's time for him to get out of Kansas City. You're at a point in your career where you're getting up there in age, and do you really want to be stuck on a team that's going to be rebuilding for the next 5 years? I don't know.
Well, if you talk about the Royals, they have MJ Melendez that's definitely going to potentially take over full-time behind the plate for Salvador Perez. Maybe you transition him into a DH role.
Yeah, I mean, you could if Salvi really wants to stay in Kansas City. But if I'm Salvi, I would think about getting out and going to a contender, because Salvador Perez, I think, could still play. But he still only got
3 more years of his prime left before he's going to be out of it, and you don't want to be like Miguel Cabrera stuck in a terrible team at the final years of your career.
You're absolutely right about that. But Ben, I'll go to you here. I mean, tale of two halves. The Miami Marlins have been really good. I mean, this team has been better than what people expect. And as for the Royals, this team has been this Royals team is still getting up there, but they still have a long way to go,
Yeah. This overall series, I think, is just a tale of two teams kind of going different directions. One team that's very young. They're going to be, of course, sellers, but they have a very bright future ahead with guys in the likes of Vinny Pasquantino, Bobby Witt Jr. I think I agree with Isaiah. I think specifically Salvi deserves to go somewhere else, but I feel like Salvi kind of reminds me of like a Damian Lillard in baseball, where he just feels very valued in one place. I don't really think he's going to leave, but I wouldn't be shocked if he does either, because I feel like if he wants to win a ring, then he deservedly does so. I do think that the Royals are going to listen into some of their relief guys at the trade deadline, guys in the likes of Aroldis Chapman, Scott Barlow, and I wouldn't be shocked of a guy like Ryan Yarbrough potentially. Their rotation, they have Greinke's been okay, I would say. He's gone 5 innings plus since May 3rd in a lot of his starts, and he's given up 3 runs most out of all of them. So, I mean, he's not pitched bad. It's just terms of a lot of the losses that he's had is because of the bad offense. They haven't got much of offense specifically, Isaiah. I don't know what you really saw specifically. I mean, I'm looking at their on-base percentage. They're 30th on base. In terms of batting average, they're 25th with 232. They're 60th in home. They're 22nd in home runs. They only have 60. They have 24th in slug. But they have a lot, they still have a lot of room to grow for sure in that overall division. The Marlins specifically, the thing about it, which is crazy, is they're 33-28, and Sandy Alcantara, I feel like, hasn't had a great year. I don't know specifically. I think the pitch clock might be affecting him, but he has a 5+ ERA. I mean, this was an NL Cy Young type of pitcher last year. I wouldn't be shocked if he kind of turns things around specifically. I mean, yes, he's going deep in innings. He's going, 6, he's going 7, but he's given up a lot more runs than we've been accustomed to, and he hasn't had as much of the strikeout numbers than he previously has. So I don't know if it's specifically just him overall mechanically. Like I said, his innings he's still okay with, but I just think maybe it's just those overall command here and there is been a little bit more spottier this year. But with that still being said, he's still one of the best pitchers in the game. I feel like he's going to turn things around. I feel like in terms of between Manoah and Alcantara, I feel more confident that I feel like Alcantara will probably get things better in terms of that than Manoah. But obviously time will tell. But like I said, their pitching staff's a lab. I mean, they have Jesus Lazaro has been great. Trevor Rogers, Edward Cabrera is ridiculous. He's gross. They have this guy, Isaiah and Laura, if you heard of Yuri Perez, who just came, and the guy's stuff is gross. I mean, they just bring guys left and right. That's why I think specifically Johnny Cueto, there's no room for him to be even on a specific on this roster, because he's not going to pitch as it is with all the young talent that they have. He can go somewhere else like a Kansas City, where he could probably start every other 5th day and make his money. But that's why, guys, that they were able to deal a guy like a Pablo Lopez, because they saw all this young talent in pitching that they could either get somebody back in return. Actually, I'm pretty salty enough that apparently Yuri Perez was somebody the Red Sox were looking at, but I guess specifically they were worried potentially, I think, about his arm problems maybe in the past. He had some type of injury problem in the past, so I can understand it. But man, he's turned out to be something. He's turned out to be somebody that's really special. And the crazy thing about the Marlins pitching staff, they have guys essentially mostly all their staff that are under the age of 30. So, I mean, they're going to be set for a long period of time. So, and then, like you said, their offense has been great. Yuli Gurriel, Garrett Cooper. Garrett Cooper, think about this, guys. He's batting .242 with 6 home runs. This was the guy specifically I wanted the Red Sox to take a look at last year at the trade deadline. His overall splits aren't bad. So I feel like the Marlins going to be a team that's going to be, I guess, Kim, I forgot a last name. There was a tweet I saw yesterday that I guess that there might be some overall trade discussions already in terms of some guys that could be on the move for the Marlins. I wouldn't be shocked if a guy like, Jorge Soler were a team that really needs pop. Heck, imagine the Rangers got a guy like Jorge Soler in that lineup with the way that they've been hitting, or a team, that like the Yankees, I guess, maybe that could just maybe a little bit more pop. So yeah, just look at it that way. The Marlins have a really good team going right now. Like I said, that division's still kind of been up in the air, but they're second. They're into the last 10. The Royals, of course, are just going to be rebuilding, and they're going to be one of the top selling teams come the deadline.
Yeah, and we talked about one of the questions here. It says, do you believe the Miami Marlins are actual playoff contenders? In one of the news and notes here, I think they are personally, because wild card for sure.
Yeah.
But we'll see how the other teams land here. And then talk about the Cubs and the Padres. So Isaiah, did you give your take on if the Marlins are actual playoff contenders?
Yeah, I think they are. I think they're a wild card contender. You look at the pitching staff that Ben outlined. It's young, it's nasty. They got so much room to grow. And also the bullpen as well. They have AJ Puck, who was formerly of my A's, who is a very young left-hander who's got really good stuff. And then the lineup is just young, and they're just getting better and better and better. I think that they remind me of the Mariners back when the Mariners from a couple of years ago, where they had all this young talent. They just needed to add a couple of veteran pieces. And then you look at the Mariners now. So I think the Marlins, they're well ahead of schedule. I don't think that they'll contend for a World Series this year. But I think this Marlins team, with all the young talent that they have, they're coming. And everybody needs to they need to be scared of Miami, because I think in the next couple of years, Miami's definitely going to be in the mix for the NL East and also the National League in general, with all that talent that they have at their disposal.
Is it just me, by the way, before we keep going? I feel like Miami sports are just on this very young underdog type of feel. All their teams are now just crazy. You got the Heat underdog in the finals. You got the Panthers underdog, young team with some veterans. You got the Marlins, a young type of a team. The Miami basketball team was in the Final Four. South Florida, man, the underdog story, they've been killing it as of late. I'm also salty about that hockey team that's over there, but we'll talk about that story for another day. I don't want to talk about it right now.
Yeah, so anyways, here we got to talk about the next one is the Cubs and the Padres. So, if you talk about the Padres, they're starting to pick it up as of late. But talk about David Ross arguing with Phil Cuzzi and getting ejected because he didn't really like that strike call. And you talk about Phil Cuzzi. I have seen Phil Cuzzi be the plate umpire for Dodger games that I've watched. And, man, Phil Cuzzi strike zone is just too generous. He has this wide, generous outside or inside corner. He has a big zone that is friendly for pitchers. Although hitters can hit that zone, but if it's like corner, like on the edges here, he gets a little bit too generous.
Ben, you want to go or should I go?
You go, Isaiah.
I'll go.
Go ahead.
Yeah, we'll flip it this one. Obviously this game as a whole, I didn't really watch most of it. In terms of the overall two teams, I feel like they've been kind of similar in a way. I feel like the Padres have been the bigger disappointment. You have all that talent. Essentially you have an all-star team on an overall baseball team. You have Juan Soto, you have Manny Machado, you have Xander Bogaerts, Fernando Tatis Jr. Yes, Tatis and Xander and Manny, they've had their injuries here and there, but just as a whole, as a team specifically, they've been extremely underperforming, left and right. Heck, when the Red Sox came into San Diego for that series, they took 2 out of 3. And, the thing about the Padres has been really staggering is they've had a really hard time with guys with scoring position. I think maybe they're starting to do a little bit better as of late, but for a team that has a lot of expectations in terms of the talent that they have, they've been underperforming like crazy. I mean, crazy things have happened. I feel like they could turn things around, but I was seeing something this morning about Juan Soto, having terms of question in terms of how this lineup, why this is the case in terms of why they're underperforming like this. I think Manny Machado had some comments about it a couple days ago. Fernando Tatis, like some of like their players are saying, and I feel like it's the matter of terms of just holding themselves accountable and playing to their better overall standards. Because I think just they're a lot better team than they are, and I think that Juan Soto, I think, has a contract coming up in terms of discussions, and the Padres are going to have to figure out in terms of they want to pay him long term. It doesn't seem like Juan Soto wants to be there for the long term. I think specifically, if you're a Met fan out there, and you're looking at potentially the next superstar between a guy like Shohei or Juan Soto potentially in your overall bucket with Steve Cohen with all that money, watch out for that specific overall situation, because it doesn't seem like Juan Soto. I know they've obviously been underperforming, but from the overall video that I saw this morning, it seems like Juan Soto's had some frustration overall with that team. In terms of the overall pitching staff, they've had some of their moments. Blake Snell has been pitching better as of late. He's a free agent actually after the season, I believe. Joe Musgrove's been pitching okay. Yu Darvish has had his moments up and down. I feel like their bullpen's been up and down, but Josh Hader's had a bounce back year. They did win. The Padres won today 5-0. The Cubs as a whole, the Cubs, Marcus Stroman's had a really good year for them. Justin Steele is a young guy. Kyle Hendricks has been up and down. He's had his moments, but he's a older type of a pitcher. And then their offense as a whole, it's okay. I know that they brought in Dansby. Patrick Wisdom's had some decent pop in their lineup. Seiya Suzuki's been okay. I just feel like specifically it's just a very streaky type of a team where David Ross, I think specifically, if David Ross has a very underperforming year this year, next, they might have to go for a new managerial change. Even though I feel like the players like him, but I think he's an overall decent person. I just don't know specifically the long term with the Cubs. But yeah, I just feel like these two teams in this game tonight, it's the matter of one team that's essentially has a lot higher expectations, which is absolutely underperformed like crazy. And the other one's just kind of treading water and trying to kind of figure itself out in terms of a lot of their pieces. I know that some of the pieces have kind of been there for the long term. Then obviously some that are trying to kind of come in and fill in and try to figure themselves out for that team. But I'll kind of be curious in terms of where things go with this Padres team, because I think I think Isaiah might have had them as the overall perennial favorite. I think I have them as one of the teams specifically in the long playoff race. Right now, as a whole, both of our guesses are kind of looking at slim at the moment, because they're not playing the well. They're not playing as great as I was thinking by this point in time in the season.
Yeah, I'll tell you here. So, Isaiah, what is your thoughts on this Cubs and Padres game?
I got a hot take for you guys on the Chicago Cubs. Ben mentioned that if the Cubs continue to struggle, maybe they'll do a managerial change in the next year or two. I think they'll do a managerial change by the end of June. When you look at the Cubs, their expectations, nobody expected the Cubs to win the division. Nobody expected the Cubs to contend for a World Series. But I think a lot of people, after the money they spent in the offseason getting Dansby Swanson, last offseason they got Marcus Stroman, they got Seiya Suzuki, who has turned out to be a really nice player for them. After they got Dansby, and I think they got someone else.
Bellinger.
Yeah, they spent a lot of money in the offseason, and I don't think the Cubs expected to be as bad as they are right now. I think the Cubs expected that, hey, we'll be, wild card contenders, kind of like what the Miami Marlins are. And right now, when you look at the Cubs, they're struggling and they're underperforming. And when you look at the Cubs' schedule, the next month, it's really, really tough. After they play they played against the Padres, in which the Padres took 3 out of 4. They go to Anaheim and play the Angels for a 3-game series. And they play the Giants for a 3-game series in San Francisco, which is a very tough place to play.
And then you look at it, they play Pittsburgh, who right now, surprisingly, the Pittsburgh Pirates are the leader in the National League Central. I mean, who expected that? And then they play the Orioles for a 3-game set. Then they play the Pirates again for another 3-game set. And then they play the Cardinals for 2. And then they have the Phillies for 3. And then they have the Guardians for 3 to wrap up June. That is a really tough schedule. And I think if the Cubs just struggle horrendously in that stretch, I could see David Ross being canned midseason, because I just feel like the Cubs think that, hey, look, we spent a lot of money in the offseason to try to get into the playoffs. We're underperforming right now. By the time the end of June hits, we might be out of the playoff race, and we might need a new voice to try to galvanize the troops. So that's why I think that, by the end of June, I think you could see David Ross being fired by the Cubs. And watch out, one name to watch out for if the Cubs do make a managerial change: Joe Girardi. The reason why is because he played there, and right now he's a broadcaster for them for WGN. He's a guy that they brought him in, I believe it was in the offseason, to be the broadcast or to be an analyst for them. And it was a move that when he was brought in, everybody was like, why are you bringing him in? It makes no sense when you already have 2 great broadcasters in the broadcasting booth. It just made no sense. But they brought him in, and I think that they brought him in to just oversee the club from the outside and then take over if need be. And I think that this could be a move for the Cubs to move on from David Ross and go get a Joe Girardi, because, Joe Girardi is a veteran manager. He's a guy that's not going to tolerate any BS. And I think that, for the Cubs, that's the kind of manager you need, because David Ross, he's a guy that's like really nice. He's a guy that's not going to, chew guys out. He's kind of like a Rob Thompson. He's very beloved in Chicago. But when you're a manager, sometimes when things aren't going right, what you need to do to fire people up is you just got to give them a good ass chewing. And that's what Joe Girardi would bring to the table. He's a guy that would bring discipline. He's a guy that would bring a no BS type of an attitude. And that's what the Cubs need right now, I think, to turn it around. So I think if the Cubs continue to struggle, I truly believe that the Cubs will fire David Ross, and you will see Joe Girardi being in the dugout for the Chicago Cubs at the start of July.
So anyways, now we're going to talk about the Yankees and Dodgers matchup. We saw an epic 3-game series where we saw Aaron Judge and the Yankees 2 out of 3, Freeman, Betts against Freeman and Betts. I think this was a World Series preview, Isaiah. I really think that we could potentially see that World Series.
I agree with you, Loro. That's why I was very fascinated to tune into this series, because I truly believe that we saw a potential World Series preview. You look at this team. The Dodgers and the Yankees both sitting atop their divisions right now. They have star talent on offense and in the pitching staff. This is a matchup I think everybody's been wanting to see for the last 2 years, not even 2 years, like more like 4 to 5 years. I mean, this is a matchup everybody wanted to see. And I think that, if we get that matchup, it's going to be one of the highest rated matchups, World Series matchups in all of baseball. And it's going to be a historic matchup. And with the way that these two teams are playing right now, I think we could definitely see this in the World Series. It would be a great matchup for sure. And imagine Aaron Judge, Giancarlo Stanton, you have DJ LeMahieu, and all the talent the Yankees have, Garrett Cole as well, versus the Dodgers with Mookie Betts, Freddie Freeman, and JD Martinez versus, and also the pitching staff with Clayton Kershaw, Tony Gonsolin, Dustin May. I mean, it would be a star-studded matchup. It would bring out, tons of celebrities watching this in the World Series. I mean, it would be an epic matchup. So I hope to God that it definitely is the World Series matchup, because I've personally been wanting it for the last 4 years. But yeah, you're right. I think this definitely is a matchup that could be a preview, or was a preview, of the World Series.
Yeah, you're absolutely right about that. But we got to talk about Noah Syndergaard. He signed a 1-year deal with the Dodgers past off season, and he struggled mightily. But you know what? I feel like the Dodgers need to somehow figure this out. Either move him to the bullpen or DFA him. I think you gotta see what he can do first. I think Dave Roberts is still patient with him, but at some point, I think his patience is going to run out.
I think the Dodgers should move him to the bullpen. I think that he would be an exceptional electric reliever for the Dodgers. He's got great stuff. He doesn't have great starting pitching stuff, but he's got good enough stuff to be an electric reliever. I mean, this guy, he doesn't throw 98 to 100, but he still throws 94 to 96. He's got nasty off speed stuff. I think that his next start against, I don't know who's, I think is he pitching against the Phillies, Loro?
Um, Noah Syndergaard is pitching against the Reds.
Okay, so he's pitching against the Reds. Yeah, I mean, this is a big start for him because it's in Cincinnati, hitters friendly ballpark. It is against a lineup that's not really that good in the Reds lineup. So if he doesn't pitch well against the Reds, he doesn't have to dominate, but he needs to give you a quality start. If he doesn't give you a quality start against the Reds, then I don't think that you have any hope that he can turn it around. So this is a make or break start for Noah Syndergaard, and if he doesn't turn it around with this start, then I think you move him to the bullpen because it will add more depth to your bullpen, and also it will add it will make your bullpen more electric because you have a guy in Syndergaard who can pitch not only just one inning, but he can go 2 or 3 innings for you. And it could be like what Tim Lincecum brought to the Giants in the postseason when he came out of the bullpen.
Oh, you're absolutely right about that. That definitely could. But anyways, here now we got the next thing we got to talk about here is the Phillies placed Alec Baum on the injured list and Chris Sale on the injured list. Who do I think is the bigger loss? I think it's Chris Sale.
Yeah, Laura, I agree with you. I think it's Chris Sale. I think Chris Sale is the bigger loss because the Phillies, I think, can absorb the loss of Alec Boehm since their lineup is so deep with Trey Turner, Bryce Harper, Nick Castellanos, Kyle Schwarber. Sale is one of the top guys in that Red Sox rotation, and it's already a rotation that's not really that deep. So you're losing one of your top guys in an already thin rotation. So that's a big loss for the Red Sox, and they got to get him back. I don't know how bad the inflammation is in his shoulder, but when you're talking about pitchers, you're talking about shoulders. That's never good. So it's a big loss for sure. I think with Boehm, he's going to be out only 10 days. It was only like a minor hamstring injury. He'll be back most likely. He'll be back most likely on the Phillies road trip to Oakland coming up in a week span. So it's not that big of a loss, but for Chris Sale, he's going to be out for, I think, at least a month with that shoulder inflammation. So that's a huge loss for them, and they got to get him back because if they don't, then it's just a big blow to their rotation.
Absolutely. And then you talk about the Diamondbacks. They signed manager Torey Lovillo to a 1-year extension following a surprising 35-25 start. Well, if you talk about it, what my thoughts on this is that, you know what? I really think Torey Lovillo has earned the right to get at least another year extension through 24, Isaiah. I still think he's the right fit in Arizona, but you talk about the Diamondbacks. This team has really surprised a lot of people this year.
Well-deserved extension for Torey Lovillo. I was wrong. I thought that Torey Lovillo should have been fired last year after the Diamondbacks, had 2 bad years in a row. But hey, credit to the Diamondbacks front office and Mike Hazen for sticking with them because it's paying off big time. The D-backs are currently tied with the Dodgers in the NL West. For the lead. They're 35-25. They're playing great baseball right now. Their young talent is coming through. I mean, guys like Corbin Carroll, is hitting the ball extremely well. The pitching staff, after they moved on from Madison Bumgarner, it's been one of the best pitching staffs in all of baseball. And, the Diamondbacks, I don't know, they're definitely going to be in the playoff race this entire season. They play the Nationals for a 3-game series starting tomorrow. Then they play Detroit, so they should rack up a lot of the wins. But I saw them when they played the Phillies and when they played the Oakland A's. I mean, they were outstanding in those series against the A's and the Phillies, taking 2 out of 3 from both teams. So they're not a joke, and they're not a pretender. They're a for real contender, and I expect them to contend all season long. And Laurel, a guy to watch out for the managerial carousel this upcoming offseason is Jeff Bannister. I mean, with the way the D-backs are playing, and Bannister is the bench coach for the D-backs right now, I expect a lot of the members of the D-backs coaching staff to get a look for managerial jobs this offseason. And Jeff Bannister's been a manager before, and he should be a manager again. Whether it's this upcoming or next season or the year after, because he's very well deserving of it. I think that you're going to see Jeff Bannister being a guy that a lot of teams look out for when it comes to manager searches this offseason.
Oh, absolutely. But you know what? I think Arizona will probably be the 6th seed, and I could envision the Mets getting back to being at 5 or something like that.
Don't even get me started on the Mets. I mean, they are inconsistent, just like the Phillies. And yeah, it's good to see these fresh blood teams like the D-backs, the Marlins, who haven't been good for a while, be in the mix for the playoffs. And I think that you're going to see a D-backs Marlins battle for one of the playoff spots in the NL, and it's going to be fascinating to watch.
Well, next up here, we're going to talk about Albert Pujols being a special assistant to Rob Manfred. I think this was a good move. Albert Pujols knows the game from his heart, and Isaiah, I'll tell you, Albert Pujols will give Rob Manfred some fresh ideas on how to make the game better.
I agree. I like this move by Major League Baseball to name Albert Pujols as a special assistant. Albert Pujols, you're right. He knows the game of baseball. He's going to be able to give Rob Manfred a lot of new ideas to either change the game of baseball or to stop changing the game of baseball, because he's played the game and he's a future Hall of Famer. So I like this move by MLB. Albert Pujols knows his baseball, and I think he's definitely going to make a really good special assistant to Rob Manfred. And Rob Manfred should take his advice, because Albert Pujols definitely knows a lot more baseball than Rob Manfred.
Make him commissioner.
yeah, for that.
We talk about panic or patience game. This is another edition of it, and let's see if our minds have changed. Should we be patient, or is it time to push the panic button with these struggling teams? We'll start with the St. Louis Cardinals. I'm still patient with them because this has been a rough start for the Cardinals. But at the same time, I think somehow they'll pick it up. I think they'll finish the season on a good note. But I just don't think they're going to make the playoffs just because there's things that they're dealing with, losing Yachty and all that. So I am still patient with the Cardinals. This team is still very talented, but I really think that it's time for them to start winning ball games.
For me, it's panic time, because, the Cardinals were playing good baseball after their rough start to the season. And then they've hit another rough patch, and they've been losing a lot of ball games. You look at what this team did. They lost I believe they lost 2 out of 3 to the Guardians at the end of May, and then they split the series, a 2-game set with the Royals, and then they got swept by Pittsburgh, and then now they lose tonight to the Texas Rangers. And then the schedule just continues to get tough. After they play the Rangers, you have 3 against the Reds, which you should easily win, and then you play the Giants, then you play the Mets. The Nationals come in, the Cubs and the Astros and the Yankees and the Marlins. I mean, that's going to be a really tough schedule for the Cardinals. I think that, St. Louis, when their schedule ultimately gets easier down the stretch, it might be too little too late for them because they'll be in a huge hole that they just can't get out of.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. But we'll have to see. I think the Reds will probably fall down to last place or something like that. But anyways, here now, we talk about the Chicago White Sox. And this team, I'm still panicking on them just because there's still things that I'm concerned about. But if they can pull it together somehow, I could see the White Sox getting back into contention.
For the White Sox, I'm panicking too because it's not because like their schedule is rough or anything like that. It's because they're in a division where, like, let's face it, their division is winnable, but it just seems like there's a lot of chaos in that White Sox organization where guys are not happy with their spot in the lineup or how they're used in the bullpen. It's just there's so much turmoil going on with the Chicago White Sox, and Pedro Grifol, this is his first time managing a ball club, and I don't know how he's going to be able to get through it, the turmoil, having never been able or having never gotten a shot at doing it before. So I'm kind of wary about it. The White Sox are fourth place in the AL Central. They're 26-35 right now. They're 5.5 back of the Twins. But I think with their talent, they can make a run, but it all depends on if they can fix that chemistry. If they don't fix that bad chemistry in the clubhouse, then they're not going to go anywhere because guys are just going to keep complaining. Guys aren't going to be happy, and you need to have a happy team in order to be a winning ball club.
Then we talk about the Philadelphia Phillies. They're 28-32. Things are slowly picking up, but they have a tough stretch coming up. For me, I'm kind of hitting the panic button on the Phillies, but we'll see how they do this week.
For me, I've been panicking since the end of May because I thought that the Phillies, they play good against the bad teams, they play awful against the good teams, and when you want to make the playoffs, you gotta play good against the good teams in order for you to make the playoffs. The Phillies, this is the thing with the Phillies, they're so inconsistent. On some nights, the pitching staff is extremely good. Sometimes, some nights the lineup is extremely good, but the pitching staff sucks. They just don't have complete performances a lot, and you need to have complete performances from the pitching staff, the bullpen, and also the lineup if you want to make a run at the playoff. That's how good teams win, is that they have complete performances from all three phases. Tonight was the exception. They had a great performance from Nola. They had a great performance from the bullpen. The offense stepped up with 8 runs. That was what you want to see moving forward, but I'm still kind of wary about it because the Phillies have just been inconsistent all year long. They lose 3 games in a row, then they win 5 in a row, then they lose another 4 games in a row. It's just never consistent with the Philadelphia Phillies, and like you're right, Laurel, they've got a tough stretch coming up. They're probably going to beat up the Tigers. They're going to beat up on the Nationals, but it's about beating up on the Braves, the Mets, the Dodgers. That's the litmus test for the Phillies. And the next couple weeks are going to be that stretch that determines whether the Phillies are for real or not.
Anyways, now we got it. The next team we have here is looking at the script right now. We got the Los Angeles Angels of Anaheim. They're starting to fall off a cliff a little bit. But I have a really good feeling that Shohei Ohtani is going to be leaving the Angels in the offseason to come to my Los Angeles Dodgers.
I'm not really panicking about the Angels because the Angels were a surprise. The fact that they are still hovering around 500 to me is a surprise. But you look at their schedule coming up, it's rough. They got 3 against the Cubs. They got 3 against the Mariners. They got 3 against the Rangers after that. I think the Angels are definitely going to, or 4 against the Rangers after that. I think the Angels are definitely going to fall out of contention and fall out of 500 by halfway into June. And I think that you're going to start seeing the Angels start selling. Guys like Ohtani, guys like a lot of their veterans are going to be sold on the trade block. What I don't, Laurel, this is what I don't understand from the Angels. Why did you call him Mickey Moniak and he batted 400 for you, and why are you all of a sudden putting him on the bench and giving him limited opportunities? It makes no sense. I mean, put the guy in center field, put the guy in left field, and let him be your starting left fielder. He's shown that he can play and hit at the major league level. It just makes no sense what Phil Nevin is doing with Moniak hitting the way he is and just having him in a platoon role all of a sudden. It makes no sense. I think that the Angels need to play Moniak in a full-time role and just let him roll with it because he's shown that he can play at the major league level. And the Angels right now, I mean, they're sputtering. They, are starting to fall off a cliff. And you're right. By the end of June, the Shohei Ohtani sweepstakes are going to be in full effect. And we're going to be talking about this on this show, where Ohtani goes and who's going to trade for him. And it's going to be so much fun to talk about.
In my opinion, I don't think the Angels trade Shohei Ohtani at the trade deadline. He's going to continue to build his value for the offseason and play the remainder of his season with Anaheim, because I have a feeling that the Dodgers are going to sign him this offseason.
Well, I think that he's going to be a free agent at the end of this season, no matter who gets him anyways, because I don't think he's going to stay with that team unless they give him like a 10 years, $600 million contract right away. But I think he wants to explore his market. He could potentially get like 600 to 700 million on his next deal with how good he is. And I think that, you could see him wanting to be like LeBron James and, go on that, be wined and dined and go on that free agency tour. So do I think they'll trade him in the trade deadline? It depends on how bad the Angels are. If the Angels are like 10 games out of 5 or out of 500, then yeah, I think they'll trade him, but so they can get value back. But I don't know how many teams are going to offer like a ginormous package.
They're not going to do that because I just think that they want to wait till free agency.
But what if the Angels fall out of it, though? Do you think that they want to get something back in return, knowing that Shohei will leave in the offseason?
No, they stick with him because what I think is going to happen is the Angels will give him the qualifying offer, which I envision, and I feel like that the Angels can get draft pick compensation in return.
Yeah, I think you might be right on that. I think that and plus I just don't think any team you're gonna have to give up a massive package to get him, and you're potentially only getting him for half the season. So I don't know if any team wants to risk that.
I don't think any team would want to risk that because I'm telling you right now, Isaiah, my hot take is that the Dodgers will end up with Shohei Ohtani in the offseason. We're going to give him at least a 9 or a 10-year deal, but it'll be a lot of money.
I think if Shohei, wherever he signs, I think he's going to have to it's going to be at least a 10-year deal. I think it's going to at least be like a 10-year,
based on what I heard about his offseason plans, he prefers to stay in the West Coast. Based on what I heard, and I do believe that he will wear Dodger blue next year.
He could wear Dodger blue. People were throwing out the Mets or the Phillies. I don't see it because I don't think the Phillies will add another $500 million contract to the contracts that they have. But yeah, it's gonna be interesting. I mean, him in Dodger blue. Imagine him with Mookie Betts and Freddie Freeman and all the guys that they have there. Max Muncy, yeah. But, I mean, if you're thinking about the West Coast, watch out for the Mariners, too. Watch out for the Mariners.
Well, I think the Mariners will be a sleeper team. But
they'll be a sleeper team.
For me, in the offseason, I think the favorite to land Shohei is the Dodgers, and then I put the Padres there in second place, and then the Giants in third, and then the Mariners in fourth. Those are the 4 teams I see making a run, but I ultimately think he's going to end up wearing the Dodger blue.
How about the Mets, Loro? Where do you think the Mets will go after him? I think with Steve Cohen,
I think so because Billy Epler is the one that signed Shohei in the offseason.
Right.
I think I put Mets as 5th, but I ultimately think Shohei is going to end up wearing Dodger blue next year
Right, right.
because he prefers to stay West. And do you agree with my prediction about Shohei being on my team next year?
I could see him being in Dodger blue. I think the Dodgers are definitely one of the contenders for him. But I think that when you talked about your teams list for Shohei, right? I think the Dodgers are definitely up there. But I think the Padres, I put the Giants ahead of the Padres, and here's why. Because if you're the Padres, you already have a lot of big contracts, and if you sign Shohei, you're basically going to have to choose between signing Shohei or signing Juan Soto because you can't keep both. You can't keep both on your team, especially after you gave Machado that big extension. So, and you have Tatis there as well. So you're going to have to choose between Ohtani or Soto, and I just think the Padres have too many big contracts on the book. So I think if I have to pick like a team's list for Shohei, I think it's Dodgers 1, and then San Francisco. And this might be crazy, but watch out for Texas because with the Rangers playing the way they are right now, they're in the AL West, and also Yu Darvish played there in Texas, and he enjoyed his time in Texas. And Shohei and Yu Darvish are really close.
I know. And in my MLB The Show League, I had the Padres risk the Shohei trade and had to give up a lot.
Wow.
I made AJ Preller look foolish.
Wow.
In my MLB The Show League, I made AJ Preller look foolish to getting Ohtani, since in my MLB The Show League, I purposefully suspended Fernando Tatis Jr. for 1 year because of his violation with PEDs.
How much did the Padres, they gave up a lot for half a season, right? Not an extension for Shohei.
In my MLB The Show League, they gave up a lot for half the season.
Yeah. That's why I don't think any teams will trade for him, because you're gonna have to give him a lot for half the season. And then
Shohei can build his value with San Diego on that he can potentially be a Dodger.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, talking about the Mariners here, they're 29-30. I am still patient with them. This team is still really, really good.
They are, and it's a matter of time until Julio Rodriguez turns it around. He's off to a really slow start right now, but I have faith and confidence that he's going to turn it around. And you look at the Mariners, they've gone through a really tough schedule. I think that's why they've struggled. They played the Rangers over the weekend. They got swept, but the Texas Rangers are good. They're a really good team, and some could argue as they are the World Series favorites. They lost 2 out of 3 of the Yankees. They played the Pirates. They've had a really brutal schedule, but it gets easier for them now. They have the Padres for the next 2 games, and then they have the Angels for 3. Then they play the Marlins. Then they play the White Sox, Yankees, Orioles, Nationals, and Rays. It'll get a little bit easier for them. So I do think Seattle will turn it around. Do I think they'll win the division? No, because I think Texas and the Astros are just too far ahead. But I think that the Mariners will compete for an AL wildcard spot.
Absolutely. So we're going to get to some final thoughts and announcements here. So on Wednesday will be an NBA Finals edition of Sports Weekly. Isaiah and myself will be on there talking about the first 3 games of the NBA Finals. Talk about who needs to make adjustments heading into a critical Game 4 between the Miami Heat and the Denver Nuggets. And I'll tell you, it has been a really fun. It's been a fun NBA Finals if you talk about it. Miami came back to win Game 2, which ended the Nuggets' winning streak at home. But as for the Denver Nuggets, it's all hands on deck heading into a really pivotal Game 3.
Yeah, you're right. I can't wait for Sports Weekly on Wednesday, but you're right. The NBA Finals have been just surprising to me. I thought that after Game 1, the Nuggets were going to roll the Miami Heat, but credit to them. I mean, they battled, and I still cannot believe they went into Denver and took a game from the Denver Nuggets, who have not lost at home this entire year. And now you look at the Heat. The Heat, I think, have the advantage because they'll go back home for the next 2 games where they're very tough at. It's going to be crazy to see. And if Denver goes down 3-1 going into Game 5, the Denver Nuggets are going to be definitely in a lot of trouble. And, on Wednesday, Laurel, we also got to talk about the Kyrie news that broke today, where Kyrie is recruiting LeBron to join them, not the Lakers, the Mavericks. Can you believe that?
Oh, man. That might make Dallas look really bad, man.
Yeah, I mean, I think Kyrie's delusional. That's what he is. There's no way LeBron's going to Dallas.
No, I think LeBron's going to remain a Laker for at least another year.
Yeah, that's what I think too. There's no way he'll leave the LA lifestyle for Dallas. There's just no way. And I think that, but I think it shows that, hey, LeBron and Kyrie wants to play together. So come on, Lakers, make it happen.
Anyways, for Isaiah Leong, his final thoughts here. It's been a great show for Batter Up, and we also can't wait to bring back the extra point when we welcome in a brand new NFL season, which I really think is going to be a fun season. But also on Wednesday, we got a NFL topic too. Like Ed Oliver just got an extension, Norma Hunt passing away, and I have to think of more if I see it.
Yeah, it's going to be a fun show, man. Looking forward to Sports Weekly on Wednesday, the return of Sports Weekly on Wednesday. It was a great Batter Up show, man, and great to have this program back. We're going to be doing this program more often now that our schedules are kind of getting clearer, and the baseball season is in full swing. So make sure you guys continue to check out the IM6 Network and the MI6 Sports Network on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, for shows and other content. I think Kicking It with Cruz is on sometime this week.
Sometime this week. I don't know when.
Yeah, sometime this week. And also we're going to have Face Off with Taylor to recap the Stanley Cup Finals, Game 2, tomorrow night. So tune in for that. It's going to be a great week of programming. But, great to have Batter Up back, and looking forward to the return of Sports Weekly.
Yeah, have a great night, everybody. And then we leave you with this.
I speak it every day. I'm trying to get it poppin' each and every way. It's one nation under goons. My goons are stripping all these cats down in the under rooms.